The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension as the judge prepared to make his ruling. Lawyers whispered, papers rustled, and the young girl at the center of it all sat quietly, her small hands folded in her lap. No one expected what happened next. Just as the judge was about to speak, the little girl stood up, her voice clear and certain. She pointed straight at him and said, "You're my dad." The room fell silent. Gasps echoed through the rows of spectators. The judge's face froze, his gavel hovering in the air. Was this some kind of mistake? A misunderstanding? Or was there a truth buried beneath years of secrets? Every eye was on the judge, waiting for his reaction, but he just sat there, staring at the child who had just turned his entire world upside down. What happens next will shock you. The judge's fingers tightened around his gavel, but he didn't bring it down. His throat felt dry as he looked at the little girl, searching for some explanation in her wide, innocent eyes. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Lawyers exchanged confused glances, and the bailiff shifted uneasily. The girl's guardian, a woman with tired eyes, quickly stood up. "Your Honor, I don't know why she said that," she stammered, her voice trembling. "She's only 7. But the little girl didn't waver. "I know it's you," she said again, softer this time. "I remember." The judge felt a strange chill run through him. He had ruled on hundreds of cases, seen countless families come and go. But this was different. His mind raced. How could this child possibly know him? Was this some cruel trick, or had he unknowingly left behind a piece of his past? The judge took a slow breath, his mind racing. He had no memory of this child. Yet the certainty in her voice, the way she looked at him, it unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. He glanced at the woman standing beside her, the guardian who now looked as confused as he felt. "Miss Carter," he addressed her, his voice steady but strained. "Is this child mistaken?" The woman hesitated, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, she knelt beside the little girl. "Sweetheart, why do you think this man is your dad?" The girl clutched the hem of her dress, her small fingers twisting the fabric. "Because I remember his face," she said softly. "I remember his voice, and my mommy told me." The judge felt the room spin slightly. Who was her mother? And why would she say such a thing? His past, long buried, suddenly didn't feel so distant. The judge's grit on his gavel loosened, his pulse pounding in his ears. He wasn't sure what unsettled him more, the girl's unwavering certainty, or the way her words sent a chill down his spine. His past was clean, or so he thought. He had no memory of this child or her mother, but something about her eyes, something familiar. "Who is your mother?" he asked carefully, his voice quieter now. The little girl hesitated, then whispered a name. The moment it left her lips, the judge felt the air rush from his lungs. It was a name he hadn't heard in years, a name that belonged to someone he once cared for, but had long since lost touch with. His fingers trembled slightly as he set the gavel down. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as emotions flickered across his face. If this child was telling the truth, his entire life was about to change. The judge's breath hitched as the name echoed in his mind. It wasn't possible. He hadn't seen her mother in over a decade. His heart pounded as he studied the little girl's face again, searching for something, anything that made sense. And then he saw it. The way her nose crinkled slightly when she looked up at him, the faint dimple in her left cheek. It was subtle, but now he couldn't unsee it. A murmur swept through the courtroom, and Miss Carter shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, I didn't know," she admitted, her voice laced with unease. Her mother never mentioned. She stopped, as if suddenly realizing something. "She only told me to bring her here today. She said it was important." The judge's stomach turned. Why today? Why now? And then, a court officer stepped forward, holding a sealed envelope. "Your Honor, this was left at the front desk. It's addressed to you." With trembling hands, he took the envelope, his fingers brushing over the familiar handwriting on the front. As he peeled it open, a single thought consumed him. What secret had been hidden from him all these years? The judge's hands shook slightly as he unfolded the letter. The familiar handwriting sent a wave of emotions crashing over him. His eyes scanned the first line, and for a moment, the noise of the courtroom faded into a distant hum. Asterisk, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and it's time for you to know the truth. Asterisk. His chest tightened. The letter continued, revealing what he never saw coming. The woman he once loved had kept a secret from him, a daughter. Their daughter. She had been battling an illness, and knowing her time was running out, she had done the only thing she could. She sent the little girl to find him. The weight of it all sank in as he looked up at the child, his child, standing there, waiting for him to say something. Before he could speak, the girl reached into her pocket and pulled out a locket. "Mommy said you'd remember this," she whispered. The moment his eyes landed on it, his breath caught. It was the same locket he had given her mother years ago, a token of love he thought had been lost forever. The courtroom was silent, waiting. And in that moment, the judge knew his life would never be the same again. The judge's throat tightened as he reached for the locket. His fingers brushed against the cool metal, and memories flooded back. Laughter, late-night conversations, promises he thought would last forever. He swallowed hard and looked at the little girl, who stared back with hopeful eyes. He had spent years making decisions for others, ruling on what was fair, what was just. But now, the biggest decision of his life wasn't written in law books. It was standing right in front of him, waiting for an answer. Slowly, he knelt to her level. "I remember," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'm so sorry I wasn't there." The little girl didn't hesitate. She threw her arms around him, holding on tight. The courtroom, once filled with whispers and shock, was now silent in a different way, a moment of understanding, of new beginnings. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still unwritten.